Hello, I know I probably completely overwhelmed you in our appointment today, so I wanted to record this video to give you a little bit more insight in terms of why I think the berberine would be so effective for you in terms of helping with weight loss resistance. Now, the reason it's going to help with weight loss resistance is it's going to do a couple things. One, it's going to balance blood sugar as well as improve hormones. So in terms of weight loss, especially those who have PCOS, what we really want to do is address that insulin piece. So in this video, we're going to talk about intermittent fasting, why it's effective and why it might be effective for you, as well as zone in on the research on berberine. So number one, let's start with intermittent fasting, why it's so impactful. Now, here's the cycle that we're seeing, especially in those with PCOS and insulin resistance. So if we have stress is going to release sugars from our muscles and from our liver into our bloodstream. The reason it does that is our bodies don't know the difference between stress of kids in the world that's around us or stress of a bear. Either way, it says something stressful, it's dangerous, let's release sugar into the bloodstream so that we can fight or flight to save yourself. So that's what it's doing. It's going to increase your blood sugar, or if you're going to have high carb foods, it's going to increase insulin. Now, what happens with insulin is it decreases a protein called sex hormone binding globulin. You can think of this protein as the catcher's mitt that binds on to proteins and other hormones and makes them inactive. So essentially, we have less of that catcher's mitt. So now we have more free testosterone and more free estrogen. So this is why individuals with PCOS have elevated levels of testosterone and they see things like hair growth and acne. Now, in terms of the birth control, unfortunately, that also will decrease sex hormone binding globulin over time as well. So this might actually make it worse. Now, we're also going to see higher levels of estrogen because you don't have that catcher's mitt to bind onto it. So it's going to be really important that we make sure that you have adequate bowel movements and adequate fiber, because fiber will help to bind onto estrogen and eliminate it through the bowels. Another thing with estrogen is any tissue that's has estrogen receptors. So in women, we can think of our breasts, our lower half. If we have more estrogen floating around, it's going to stimulate those tissues to grow. We can also see it stimulating the uterine lining, making the uterine lining get thicker so that our cycles are heavier with more cramping. Then what happens here is we see insulin resistance. So now your body actually has to produce more and more insulin because the cells start to not respond. Insulin resistance is essentially, you can think of it as you might see a young mom and the kids are saying, mom, 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 and she really can't hear them. She's kind of zoned it out because the kids have just been saying mom over and over again. So now the kids need to shout louder to get the same response. That's what happens with insulin as well. The cells stop responding. So your pancreas has to produce more to get the same response. Now, more insulin leads to more weight gain, especially abdominal obesity. Then this whole cycle starts over. So this is essentially what we're wanting to treat for you to get to the root cause of what's going on for you. Number one, intermittent fasting is fantastic. So this is consuming all of your foods within an 8-hour window. It's been shown to reduce blood markers of inflammation. It's been shown to improve insulin sensitivity. So remember those kids saying, mom, 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 that all of a sudden now with improved insulin sensitivity, those cells will listen at a smaller rate. So now your body doesn't have to produce as much insulin to get the same response. We're also seeing that our muscles are increasing sensitivity, reduced inflammation, as well as something is going to increase in your blood called beta hydroxybutyrate. That's a ketone. So when your fats break down, your body produces ketones. That makes your mental clarity better. And it's just a marker to say, hey, yeah, we actually are breaking down fat for fuels. After you have these ketones, what we want to do is make sure you have enough carnitine to pull those ketones into that citrus acid cycle that we reviewed to burn them for ATP or energy. So intestines, again, reducing inflammation, all of these physiological changes that we're seeing, a lot of stress response reducing, a lot of inflammation reducing, and then this benefit here that we're starting to realize with intermittent fasting, especially longer fasts, is a process called autophagy. So when you fast for a prolonged period of time, typically 24 hours to 36 hours, what happens is our body starts to tell cells that might not be behaving properly to break down. So preferably, and this is what happens, is the body says, you know, old cells or cells that aren't behaving well start to break down, which is great. So here's the research on intermittent fasting. It shows that when you're skipping breakfast, we have a lower 24-hour insulin, which is what we want. We have increased lipolysis, meaning fat breakdown, as well as we're seeing a significant increase in the amount of energy that your body is exerting in a 24-hour period, which is great. Here's other things that are happening. This talk was designed for my colleagues and for doctors. That's why it's a little bit more sciencey here. But the main thing that I want you to take away is that after 4 days of fasting, your resting energy expenditure actually increases by 10%. We don't need to do long fasts like that for you. We're going to start slow and just focus on consuming all your foods within an 8-hour window. We're also seeing growth hormone increasing. So growth hormone is great. This promotes the development of lean muscle mass, and growth hormone continues to be elevated after 5 days of fasting. Another way that you can get growth hormone is really an anti-aging hormone, as well as promoting lean muscle mass, sleep. So our growth hormone primarily rises in sleep. So the more sleep you can get, the better your growth hormone will be as well. Is protein broken down? So interestingly enough, one of the things that individuals might say against intermittent fasting is, don't do intermittent fasting, you're going to break down your muscle, and of course you're going to lose weight. It's just going to be muscle that's going to be lost. But that's actually not what the research says. Lean people did derive 40% of their energy from protein during a fast, whereas obese or individuals who have fat mass only derive 5% of their energy from protein. So we do know that individuals who have extra adipose or extra fat tissue primarily will utilize their fat tissue as fuel when fasting. When you get to your ideal body weight, then we're going to be wanting to be more cautious about the time that you're fasting, as well as giving you extra amino acids to protect that lean muscle mass. So we already talked about that. So what breaks a fast? Anything that contains calories is going to increase insulin and break your fast. Things that don't break your fast are things like green tea, black coffee, water. So those are what I would recommend during your fasting window. This is that glucose monitor that I was talking about. This is just a little sticker that goes on the back of your arm. You can use the monitor, just use your phone. And this is a way that we can measure how your blood sugar responds to various different foods. So this is something that we can consider in the future. This is a multivitamin designed for people who have insulin resistance or PCOS or issues with their blood sugar. And this one is really great. It has B vitamins and alpha lipoic acid, so you can process carbs for energy versus processing carbs and storing them in your liver and then eventually storing them as body fat. So this is one that we might consider in the future as a multivitamin for you. But right now, what I want to try is Berberine. So Berberine has been shown to be as effective as metformin in lowering fasting blood glucose and hemoglobin A1C, as well as your triglycerides, so your cholesterol, and fasting insulin. In rats that were fed a really high fat diet, they showed a decrease in body weight, specifically visceral adiposity, which is just abdominal weight. Cholesterol was better, liver was functioning better. So I really like Berberine. I specifically like this one because it's better absorbed. Berberine is a herb that's really hard to absorb. So what Designs for Health has done is they've combined it with MCT oil and vitamin E and sunflower lecithin. The reason they've done that is to just increase absorption, which is great. Now, other reasons why Berberine is effective is because not only does it lower your amount of insulin that your body produces, but it actually works better than metformin because it has this added benefit of improving insulin sensitivity. So not only is your insulin going to be lower, but your cells are going to start listening at a lower volume from the pancreas. So your pancreas isn't going to have to shout as loud to get your cells to respond, which is great. The other thing I want to show you about Berberine is here. It may help to alleviate inflammation by helping in the gut. So one of the other things that Berberine does is it's antimicrobial. So if you have any bacterial overgrowth that's creating issues in terms of the amount of calories you're absorbing from the foods you eat, your intestinal health, berberine will be helpful there as well. So this is the study that I wanted to show you. Essentially, there was a fecal transplant. They took an obese rat, they transferred its feces into the lean rat. They didn't change the lean rat's diet or exercise at all, and the rat ended up becoming obese. And that was because of something called the Firmicutes-Bacteroides ratio. So this is a GI map test of a patient that came to see me with resistant weight loss. So when this ratio here, Firmicutes-Bacteroides ratio, is high, you will absorb more calories from the foods you eat, you will cause more fat to be deposited, impaired insulin sensitivity, and increased inflammation. So this is one of the additive effects that berberine can help by modulating the gut microbiome. Now, the problem is with conventional probiotics, any probiotics that contain lactobacillus, that's going to elevate this FB ratio and make matters worse for you. So if you didn't see improvements in your body composition with a probiotic that you just picked up over the counter, it could be because it contained lactobacillus as well. So those are the main things that I wanted to highlight for you. In my practice, I use probiotics that have specifically been designed with strains, more bifidobacterium strains, to help reduce inflammation, reduce insulin resistance, increase glutathione, which is our master antioxidant, to help our detox pathways. So that's where we're going to target things for you. We're going to work on blood sugar, we're going to work on gut health, and we're going to work on detoxification. The last thing I know we touched on that I really wanted to have a look at for you, of course, is the thyroid. So I look at thyroid from optimal ranges. So here's the optimal ranges versus the, quote unquote, you're going to be okay ranges, but maybe you're not going to still feel well. So I want to double check your thyroid function. And lastly, we want to look at the gene called the FTO gene. So in terms of the FTO gene, this is one of the most studied genes for weight loss resistance. It is one that 42% of Caucasians can carry this genetic predisposition, and you'll actually be 22% more likely to store body fat than individuals who don't have this gene. There we go. So what we want to do is look at how can we mitigate this. The effects of having this gene is significantly worse if you consume a low protein, high saturated fat diet or high calorie diet. Now, not only is there, if you don't have your gallbladder, you can't absorb fats. If you were having more saturated fats, so red meats, dairy, cheese, coconut oil, if you're having more saturated fat on a ketogenic based diet and you have this gene and you weren't making sure that you had enough protein, this is going to independently increase your risk of obesity by 22%, independent of diet or exercise. So this is why sometimes the ketogenic diet doesn't work for individuals as well. So I just wanted to touch on that. So I hope that was helpful in clearing things up for you. I'm going to send you over the instructional manual. Essentially what we're going to be doing is intermittent fasting. We're going to be addressing your blood sugar and your gut health. And the very last aspect that I really like to touch on after we make sure that your thyroid's good is looking at detoxification. So we really want to focus on supporting the liver in its two phases of detox. So detox is really important for eliminating hormones. So if you have extra estrogen that's contributing to weight gain, or if you have fatty liver, or if you're just having an issue processing environmental toxins, we want to support both phases. So doing things like B vitamins, making sure that you have enough amino acids, making sure you have enough magnesium. This is all going to be really important. One of the things that I emphasize is making sure that you consume enough cruciferous vegetables. So broccoli, kale, cauliflower, I actually have you measure to make sure you have enough of those. That's because they really support detoxification. And this is the detoxification of estrogen. So not only, a lot of clients come to me specifically for weight loss, and that's fantastic, but my goal is always focused on overall health. So if you have more fat tissue is metabolically active. It produces more estrogens. So in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, what is your risk of having this weight that's contributing to elevated estrogens in terms of estrogen dependent cancers. So this is why I'm big on detoxification. This is why I'm big on maintaining a healthy body weight in a safe and healthy way that's not going to stress out your body, or it's not going to negatively impact your thyroid gland, to reduce risk of estrogen dependent cancers, reduce risk of cardiovascular disease, etc. So the detox portion is really helping to eliminate any of the extra estrogens and environmental toxins that might be stored in the adipose tissue or the fat tissue that we're getting rid of. So that's it. We're working on sulfation. So these are your cruciferous vegetables. We're working on removing extra estrogens from the bowels, making sure we're pooping every day with probiotics. We're supporting the detox pathway, and we're giving you amino acids. So I hope that was helpful in summarizing the various aspects of the plan that I think would work very well for you. If you have any questions, we'll discuss on your follow-up once you've had a chance to review the program. And then I'll be writing a summary of the various supplements that I would like you to take as well. Okay, we'll talk soon.